Welcome to the 5th video in this series, where we look at the number 5 item on the OWASP top 10 list, security misconfiguration. This transitions actually pretty nicely from the previous video, where we talk about more the problems with implementation rather than design. This relates to security settings that are not configured correctly, which create opportunities for attackers to exploit. So this might be, so to speak, which knobs you've flicked up versus down, whether something's enabled versus disabled, that sort of thing. The configurations that may be applicable to some scenarios may not be the same for other scenarios, so do keep that in mind. However, some of the things that OWASP defines as security misconfigurations are missing appropriate security hardening across parts of the application, unnecessary features enabled, and a good thing to keep in mind is disable as much as you can. The less that's enabled, the less potential exploits there are. Having default accounts or passwords still enabled, error handling showing stack traces or other informative information. A really common one is in a certain library or component you're using, once an upgrade occurs, it no longer has the security settings that you thought would have, and something's different now, and it throws your system, or at least security part of your system, completely out of whack. General security settings in application servers. And lastly, that software is not outdated or vulnerable. Now this relates to the next video, vulnerable and outdated components, but we'll get to that in a bit. Alright, so let's jump into the technical example where we'll take a look at one of these in a bit more technical depth. Technical example, security misconfiguration. Okay, so looking at this website here, you might, fuck me dead. So looking at this website, you might be thinking here, oh, is he going to talk about the error messages here? Well, not quite. This error message is from the front end, and we should always assume that people can see the front end code anyway for our application. So this isn't quite the issue. The error message that we are receiving from the back end is just invalid username or password. That's not much of an issue there either. No sensitive information is being revealed. However, if we log into our admin account, there we go, and then look at the database, what we can see here is the exploit. Take 15 seconds from what I just said earlier and see if you can guess it. Now, if you're a pretty sharp one, you've probably seen that default users are still here. User 1, user 2, and admin. Alright, it wouldn't probably take a genius to guess that the username and password would be admin and admin pass. So a pretty simple example here, but something that's often overlooked is security misconfigurations, and it's often the simple things can slip through. So how do we prevent this more generally? A task to review and update your configurations as the rest of your application develops and updates itself. And a segmented approach where hopefully your application is more segmented, so if one part updates and configuration's out of whack there, it won't affect the whole application. So you might be thinking at this point, wow, this looks like a hell of a lot of work. Yes, it is a lot of work a lot of the time, especially when you're working with very large applications. Which brings me to the last 2 points to help prevent this. Remove unnecessary features or unnecessary libraries. If your application doesn't need a particular feature, try and remove it. Are there simpler libraries you could use? Is it a particular library have a lot of configurations, a lot of features that you don't need? The more configurations and the more features, the more potential exploits there are. Generally, not always the case. You're probably going to see this point and hear this point a lot throughout this list because we keep saying in programming, unwritten code has no bugs. However, in the security aspect for these videos, unwritten code has no exploits. Then after this, to help reduce the workload, try and automate some of the testing process for this sort of stuff. Try and write tests that as each update goes out, it's going to test these configurations and exploits that could possibly occur due to these configurations updating and changing. However, after that, yes, it can take a fair bit of work to try and get these settings configured correctly to secure your application. And that's it for the security misconfigurations video. Next time we're going to be talking about updating vulnerable components. See you there.